Creation ex nihilo is the theological concept of God creating the world out of nothing. Traditionally, biblical support for this idea has been found in verses like Genesis 1:1 and Hebrews 11:3, and creation ex nihilo has a long history of endorsement by such notable theologians as St. Augustine, John Calvin, and John Wesley. Yet as we saw in part 28 of this series, there is an even more ancient view of creation that has the world created not from absolute nothingness, but from a primordial state of chaos, and this view finds support in the Bible as well. So does the Bible have creation ex nihilo, or is it actually creation ex materia? In fact, it may be too hasty to attribute either view to it. One of the big problems we want to avoid in interpreting any ancient text is projecting our modern assumptions onto it. When it comes to origins, we living in the 21st century are still greatly under the influence of René Descartes, who separated existence into mental and material substances. Nowadays, it's become common to think of creation in terms of material origins, as in a creation out of nothing. But was this how the authors of Genesis understood creation? The first thing to note is what the text doesn't say. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, verse 1 reads. From what did he create them? We aren't told. Turning to the original Hebrew, we find the word bara, for create, is used in a variety of ways throughout the Old Testament, some quite hard to associate with material origins, such as God creating a pure heart, north and south, and the ends of the earth. Furthermore, of the 55 occurrences for bara in the Old Testament, 0 make mention of the materials involved in creating. You may think of man and woman being made out of the dust of the earth, but the word bara is interestingly not used in Genesis 2:7. If the Hebrew authors of Genesis did not hold to a material view of origins, it would make sense that there is no reference to any creating materials. In his book, The Lost World of Genesis 1, Old Testament professor John Walton cites this argument and many others to advocate for a functional account of biblical creation. The beginning state is notably non-functional, as indicated by the earth being described as formless and void in Genesis 1:2. The first 3 days of creation establish functions. Time is established on day 1 through the alternations between night and day. The firmament is established on day 2 in order to give people a space to live and to control the weather and allow for rain, something especially important to a culture of the ancient Near East. On day 3, God intriguingly doesn't create anything new, but orders what already exists to suit specific functions, separating seas from dry land and bringing forth plants and vegetation. In days 4 through 6 of the creation, Walton notes that God sets up functionaries to carry out certain important tasks. The lights are placed in the firmament in day 4 to mark the signs, seasons, days, and years, in connection with the system of time established on day 1. God creates all the creatures of the waters and sky on day 5, filling their places that were separated out back on day 2. Finally, on day 6, God makes land-dwelling animals and the first man and woman. The latter are to rule over all other creatures on the earth. Day 7 can be perplexing on a material account of creation. God, who is supposed to be all-powerful, seems to have gotten worn out from all that strenuous creating and decides to take a day-long rest. Even on a bit more charitable of a view, the purpose of day 7 still appears to almost entirely be about establishing the Sabbath. From a functional perspective, though, this final day of creation takes on much more significance. God rests in his resting place, which Psalm 132, 7-8 says is where his footstool, the ark, resides. This is an obvious reference to the temple, which verses 13-14 further show by locating this place of rest in Zion. The significance of God resting on the seventh day is then that order is at last completed, stability is present, and sacred space is established in a temple. You may be thinking, wait, I don't remember the temple being erected in Genesis. Your memory serves you well, but this temple is different from the one later constructed by Solomon according to the books of Kings and Chronicles. The temple where God rests on the seventh day is the cosmos itself. Josephus said of the Jerusalem temple that every one of the objects in it was intended to recall and represent the universe. From the water basin and bronze pillars in the courtyard representing the seas and the pillars of the earth, to the temple veil representing the firmament that separates the world of man from the abode of the divine, the Jewish temple was rich with cosmic symbolism. Passages like Isaiah 66, 1-2, and 1 Kings 8, 27 further support the notion of the cosmos as a temple. Francesca Stavrokopoulou, who is professor of Hebrew Bible and ancient religion at the University of Exeter, discusses these connections, as well as that of the Garden of Eden with the Temple, in her 2011 BBC series, The Bible's Buried Secrets. As common as it is to hear Christian apologists assert that the Big Bang lends credibility to the Bible's story of creation ex nihilo, we have seen several reasons to doubt that the Genesis myth is an actual creation out of nothing. The alternative of a functional origins account not only sits better among other very similar thoughts of the time, but makes sense of a number of otherwise perplexing aspects of the Genesis 1 creation account.